It is my great privilege to introduce Dr. John Ullman as our invited speaker today. I had the tremendous fortune of meeting Professor Ullman at the UCLA Anderson School of Management, where I took 3 of his classes while I was pursuing my business degree. The classes I took were organizational behavior, managerial interpersonal communications, and managing entrepreneurial organizations. Dr. Ullman has received numerous teaching awards and is one of the most popular, well-respected, and admired professors on campus. I can honestly say that his teachings profoundly impacted and changed me for the better in both my personal and professional lives. Dr. Ullman obtained his bachelor's degree in engineering mechanics from the United States Air Force Academy. He earned his master's in public policy from Harvard University and his PhD in organizational behavior from the UCLA Anderson School of Management. Can you advance the slide, Chris? John is an internationally acclaimed executive coach and consultant for a wide array of Fortune 500 companies. His clients have included Abbott, Activision, Amgen, Apple, Citibank, Cisco, the Walt Disney Company, NASA, and Nike, just to name a few. His prestigious work was featured in a Harvard Business School case study, an accomplishment only reserved for the highest achievements in the business community. Can you advance the slide? His book, Real Influence, Persuade Without Pushing and Gain Without Giving In, was selected as one of the top 30 books in business, and his premium video courses on LinkedIn Learning have millions of paid views. Topics include developing executive presence, influencing others, creating personal connections, and executive leadership. A recent direct quote from a fellow Anderson MBA student in my class, who was also a West Point graduate, says it all. Dr. Ullman possesses a unique ability to translate leadership theory into practice. The lessons learned in his courses have strengthened my relationships and reputation while delivering tangible leadership results in both my business and military careers. These are lessons every vascular surgeon should learn because we are all leaders in our organizations and communities, and we owe it to our patients, coworkers, colleagues, and families to communicate this leadership at the highest level. Please welcome Dr. John Ullman.
All right, well, thank you very much, JC. Bringing back great memories of our time together back at school, and I will now bring my presentation up into share mode. And hello, everyone. It's just terrific to be here. I'm honored, I'm enthused, and very much looking forward to the opportunity to spend some time with you, and I hope add some value and have some fun too. So I want to start with an image here, and so a question: what's happening? Well, obviously what's happening is surgery is happening, and but there's a lot more here than meets the eye. I'm going to throw a question in the mix here of what else is happening. Well, there's a lot else that's happening too, as you all very well know. But there's something happening in this picture that, well, it's not really fair. You can't really know, at least the thing that I'm going to swing back around to eventually and indicate. So a lot more going on than meets the eye here, and stay tuned for us coming back to this picture and looking at it in perhaps a very, very different way. And so to cover some ground in the time we have today, I was thinking, what should we focus on? And what I want to do is I want to offer one pretty simple model that I hope you'll find is very actionable, very practical, and valuable. And then to illustrate the model or bring it to life with a mini case study. And so we're gonna touch base with the life and times of Steve Jobs briefly here. I figure that's someone that everyone has some level of familiarity with. Although while I am using the Jobs career trajectory, and leadership development trajectory as a case study, it's not by coincidence that his experience tracks directionally very similarly. One of my coaching engagements was someone who used to be in an earlier stage of career was a heart surgeon, and a very renowned heart surgeon, and then ultimately transitioned into administrative leadership, and then ultimately became the CEO of a prominent healthcare firm, which is where I started working with him. And so he had his own version from, surgeon to a different type of leader that I think is, is parallel. So perhaps, in addition to being interesting and a colorful illustration, I hope also you'll find the Jobs path and the way we're talking about it is very applicable too. So at the end of his life, Isaacson, who was his authorized biographer, meaning Jobs, at the end, he knew he was dying, he had cancer, and this is, the final lap around the track. And then he grants permission to, for the first time ever, to someone, and it turns out Isaacson is a great biographer. You can't go wrong reading his biographies. He says, "Okay, Tag, you're it. Would you be willing to write my biography?" Of course, he says yes. And now he gives him special access to, to everything. And now, end of the project, end of Steve Jobs' life, and he poses the question, Isaacson does, well, what's the greatest product you've ever created? And as you may be aware, Steve Jobs did a whole lot of that, right? And so the original Mac, the iPhone, iPad, iTunes, and on it goes, thinking that the answer is going to be something along those lines. But Jobs says no, excuse me, obviously creating a product, and he did a whole career's worth of incredibly innovative and disruptive, just changing industries one after another with his products. He says that's very, very difficult. But he says, he says that's very difficult. It's very hard. And then I'm going to pause this story right in where we are right now, and we'll come back to how he actually answers it. But first, a detour, because he's answering this question. Keep in mind, I'm going to flip back. He's answering this question not when he is, we're going to say Steve Jobs 1.0, but he's answering this question at the very end when all of his life and learning and leadership is fully consolidated, and he's summing it all up, and he's and from that space of the fullness of experience and the end of life. In other words, he's answering the question from an older, wiser, and with a lot more bruises. Steve Jobs. And so we're going to rewind a little bit, and you may or may not be aware of this, but Jobs was fired from his own company, and for being kind of a real jerk, and it's just incredibly difficult to get along with, and incredibly abrasive, and so forth. In any event, the company he created got kicked out of it and was put into, as they call it, the wilderness or exile for many, many years. And he was so bad as a leader that, as brilliant as he was and as incredibly successful as the organization was, they still just said, we can't take this anymore. And so out he goes. And again, at that point, there's no guarantee that he's going to get another chance. He's going to come back and earn the trust and confidence of any reasonably large number of people. He's out, and it was a huge story. Everyone knew it. He's off the hot list, and wasn't getting all the invites and so forth. And so when he's down at the bottom of his career, Jim Collins, who's a terrific writer and management scholar, crossed paths with him. He said, by the way, that's a really great time to meet somebody when they're just flat on their back, and you really see true character and so forth. And so in any event, he starts developing a relationship with Steve Jobs at that point. And then, but then we kind of know the story, right? Jobs does go on to get a second chance, which by no means was guaranteed, or had any reason to think he would. And then the reason why he did is not just luck or coincidence either. It's a lot of that. But the way Collins puts it, I really like, and we could use this terminology. Steve Jobs 1.0, Steve Jobs leader 1.0 couldn't have done what Steve Jobs 2.0 did. And in fact, what we all really know Steve Jobs for these days is very much, vast majority of it is Steve Jobs 2.0, the iPhone, and the iPad, and iTunes, and all the rest of it. That's Steve Jobs 2.0. And he says, Steve Jobs isn't a success story. This is nonlinear. There's a huge gap. There's a huge space, and it could have ended all there, and no one would even, except, management historians would even remember who he is. But it's because of who he evolved into that he is much more still in the public eye. And so, tracking the course of development of Steve Jobs as our case study here, I want to drop in with why are we even talking about him in this way, and where are we going with our topic for today? And again, I want to step back and say, for the last 20 years now, my primary job has been as a leadership coach, one-on-one with senior leaders in organizations, very intensively. Usually, work together very, very in depth for at least a year, often more. And long story short, just hundreds and hundreds of leaders across industries and sectors and cultures and org stages. And I've worked with just phenomenal. I had the great privilege to stumbling into this career. I've worked with just absolutely phenomenal, off the charts, amazing leaders. Top of the list of Glassdoor, top of the list of Forbes best companies to work for, and so forth. In any event, the question I've been chasing all these years is there's a central one. It's these best of the best leaders, which I've stumbled into, having the opportunity to work with, and there's some that were really, really set apart. And I'm wondering, well, what is it? What do they do, and how do they do it? Because you can't make any predictions based on personality. It's not that they're, in other words, it's utter diversity when it comes to these best of the best leaders. They're a mix culturally, they're a mix in terms of operational style, communication style, personality, background, gender, it's just everything. It's utter diversity in terms of these best of the best, as I view it, leaders. And so how is it that we can make sense out of these folks? And is there anything that we can learn from them that we can actually apply ourselves? And so one way, one model, one tool that helps me understand what I've learned from these best of the best leaders in my view and in my research over the years and my experience working with many, 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 consolidate this into a model I'll call the 3 R's. And the idea is, what these best of the best leaders do, what they tend to do is they integrate all 3 R's, and they do it interaction by interaction. Right. And so, of course, they drive for, phenomenal results. A criteria here is a strong, long track record of exceptional results, just absolutely exceptional results. Of course, there's that. But also 2 other R's, if you will, right? So relationships, that they have a strong, broad, diverse set of relationships, people across boundaries, organizationally, industry-wise, hierarchy, age cohorts. They have people that are deeply loyal, that deeply trust them in all categories. And then so when they interact with people, they do so in a way that tends to inspire more trust, inspire rapport, inspire confidence, inspire connection, right? The very way that they show up and interact with others leaves the relationship stronger than it was before. Even under stress, pressure, difficulty, and so forth. Even if we're having a very difficult one-on-one discussion or team meeting, the relationship gets better after we interact. That's what they tend to do. And then the tagline here, others come out better whenever they interact with you. In fact, I'll pause one more time in the storyline here to say, like, if there was one thing to take away from this entire presentation, and I'm not saying here's wisdom for you. I'm saying this is what I've learned that from these extraordinary people that I'd like to share with you. If we had to boil it down to just one concept, one sentence, one directive, this is it. Can people, and I'm going to say us, do people come out better after interacting with us? That's it. And at every interaction by interaction, do they come out better? And not just more informed. We've given them useful information, but do they come out feeling better? And not just feeling in terms of happy face or in some sort of thin emotional sense, but in the full wide range of emotional resilience and capability. In other words, because I'll say me for a second, but I mean all of us, right? We're all in this together. Because I interact with you one-on-one, small group, large group, people you know, people you don't, comfortable situation, incredibly stressful situation, do you come out better? Again, perhaps with more information and tools and knowledge and insights, and is the emotional presence that you have coming out of our interaction put you in a position where now you are more capable or energized or empowered, or you felt listened to or understood or connected with, whatever the appropriate level and mode of emotional wellness to help you then go on and be able to be even better equipped to take on your next challenge or your next opportunity, or both. You're in an emotional state that you can now turn toward what is in front of you next, on the upside, the downside, challenges, opportunities of both. And now you're better equipped emotionally also to do that. So relationships. And again, if there's one takeaway, exclamation point, that's it. And then third, reputation. What do people say when we're not there anymore? So the meeting ends, now they're out of the room, now they're saying what they really think to other people. What do they say? And then not only that though, right? It's not just what do people say when we're not there, but what's the effect that we have on people when we're no longer there? And that might be 5 minutes from now after the meeting, and it might be 5 years, or it might be 50 years from now. You think about the very best, most inspiring role model leaders. When I say leader, by the way, I don't mean hierarchical leader. I mean anyone who is adding value to others, has positive influence on others. And when you think about your own set of role model leaders, don't you kind of feel a little better around them and are more capable and continue to be influenced by the example they set for you and the investment that they've made in you? There's a residual effect that can span time and space, even decades. You think about the most important people, perhaps earlier in life, who left a mark on you for the good. They still have a presence in your life. They're right there to be accessed, and the best of the best leaders, they tend to be in a sort of virtual conversation with their role model leaders rather consistently over time. So there we go. 3 R's. That's our model. That's our takeaway here. And once again, I want to emphasize, I'm just summarizing the one-liners for each of the 3 R's. Every interaction, right? It's not, at the end of a career, which by the way, isn't a bad standard to consider, right? Okay, by the time you get to the end, all of us, like Steve Jobs did, can we look back and feel good and proud about the results we've achieved, the relationships we've developed and cultivated, and the reputation, how the influence and the impact that we've had is going to live on in the hearts and minds of others. Can we feel good about that when it all comes to an end? Yes, and the only way to get there to a successful career in life, the suggestion here is there's only one way to do it. There's only one way any of us ever does and ever will, and it's one interaction at a time. There's no shortcuts. There's no fast forward. It's not conceptual. It is utterly, utterly analog. It is utterly concrete. Interaction by interaction, we have impact in the hearts and minds of others, and that accumulates over time, one way or another, for better or worse. And the suggestion is one of the reasons why these best of the best leaders become the best of the best leaders is because they realize, they integrate the short term, the long term, the strategic, the tactical. They bring the big picture into the present moment. And they know every interaction counts. They're not perfect. They make mistakes all the time, just like the rest of us, but they're reaching for something. They're reaching for all 3 R's, not trading one off against another. And it's in their awareness. It's in their consciousness, because they know interaction by interaction, that says something about who I am and what I stand for, the impact I want to have on others. And then as that accumulates in the hearts and minds of others over time, suddenly these people become surrounded by incredibly talented people who are loyal and looking out for them and so forth. So there we go. There's the bottle. 3 R's, one interaction at a time. And so Steve Jobs, while he's in exile, he does some reflection, and he realizes, as an imperfect person, just like all of us, and didn't become the perfect leader, and no one is. But he said, I got a lot of work to do. And I really need to own this. I need to internalize. I need to show up differently as a leader. And then he went to work. It's a long story, but I want to offer you just one of many, many. I didn't work directly with Steve Jobs, although I did. I've done quite a bit of coaching at Apple, including one of his direct reports, but not directly with Steve Jobs. Nonetheless, you got the Isaacson biography and so forth. Anyway. One of the mechanisms, and this is just one small piece of a broader development strategy for him as a leader over years. But again, notice the kind of the brilliance of it and the genius of it. It's a very Steve Jobsian sort of thing to do. And he's ahead of the social science on this as a technique. So every day, at the end of the day, he holds himself accountable for a couple goals that are directly related to how he needs to grow to be more of a, let's say, 3R leader. And he says, what went right today? Who helped me get there? In other words, one of the things that was a real problem for him and how he was showing up as not a 3R leader, let's say, is he's very pessimistic, and he's always complaining, and he's always haranguing people, and because he sees the faults, he sees the flaws, he sees the deltas, he sees what's missing, and he's constantly do better, do better, do better, do better. But then in the fullness of time, he's realizing, well, that's not the whole story. And so he needs to work on it, just like any of us, right? And so it's a daily standard he's reaching for, one interaction at a time, right? This isn't conceptual. It's every day I'm holding myself accountable. In the real world, am I taking actions that line up with this? And then who helped me get there? Well, again, he's very egotistical. That's no surprise, or that's no mystery. We all know this. He's just a massive, maybe narcissistic, I don't know. Excuse me, very self-focused and self-centered in so many ways. And so he's got to be more appreciative, he thinks, and give lots more credit and so forth. And so what will we today hope we get there? And that primes him up every single day now to go into the next day to do more of this, to help him turn the flywheel and cumulatively become more of the leader that he's capable of being and really wants to be, should he ever have the opportunity to lead again at scale, which it turns out that he did. And so now let's go back in the story to where we were. Remember, he at the end is considering this question. What are you most proud of creating? What's the most important part? And he says, no, it's not a product, although that's incredibly hard to do, right? He says, instead, Steve Jobs 2.0 says, what's really, really, really hard, and this is a leadership function, is it? This is a 3R function, isn't it? Is creating a team that will always be able to create and generate creative products. That's a leadership thing. That's an interpersonal thing. That's about relationships and reputation, including results. When I'm no longer there, will a team be able to go on being successful and continue? That's a leadership perspective. And so he sees this later in his career, later in life. This is an early picture of the original Mac team. And he says, the bottom line here, he bottom lines it. And he says, the best thing I ever did was build the team at Apple. And there was stuff he was doing even back in the day that he didn't realize and didn't fully appreciate, and then continued to get better and better at that as well. And so there was a snapshot. Now, one of the things I like to imagine is, this is going way back in the day, that if Steve Jobs could just take a snapshot of something that really captured him at his best as a leader and the legacy and the impact, and what does 3R look like for him in the real world, in the concrete world, you could just capture a moment that says, this is who I am at my best. Maybe this is it. Maybe this is a moment that sort of represents that or captures that. And then so, again, our model here, and something that I invite you to try and emphasize, is the 3Rs. Just reach for it. In the next interaction, the one after that, can I do things in a way that, yes, do advance wonderful results, and so people come out more strongly connected to me, more trust, more confidence, more rapport, more connection. And I can be proud of, if this were captured on video, this next interaction and the next one and the next one, and it were shown to the world, could I say, well, I really did take a good shot there. That aligns with good values and the kind of person and the kind of leader, kind of friend, the kind of spouse, parent, this might apply in personal life too. Perhaps consider it. In any event, 3Rs, interaction by interaction. And just like Steve Jobs, tomorrow's a new day. We're fighting the good fight again. It doesn't get easier. It doesn't all of a sudden just become automatic just because, I know the 3Rs. No, it's every day, just like Jobs asked himself that question. At the end of the day, we hold ourselves accountable for reaching for being the kind of person and leader that we really want to be. And we got to do it again every day. It reboots with every interaction, which is another opportunity to take our best shot. And so what I wanted to offer to you also is, we're getting near the end of the presentation time here. I'm sneaking in an activity. We won't do this, pardon me, in our time together here, but you'll have the slides. And can I please invite you to consider this as an activity to do just for fun, maybe some of you with each other or with friends or with unsuspecting family members, recruit them, bring them into the mix. But here's an activity I love doing with senior leaders that I work with, and then also with graduate students. And so here it is. What I want you to do is to take a look at your own 3R examples. Let's personalize this. Let's bring this into your own lived experience. And then your future aspirations. So past, present, future. And then again, let's stick this label on it. 3R examples, you at your best. So 3 snapshots. Now the first 2 might be actual photos, the photos that could have been taken. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. But please do make the first 2 pictures that either do exist or could exist. Again, this is utterly concrete, right? It's one interaction at a time. This is why we're going with the snapshot here. Either a real one or one that could have been taken. Capture a moment, just like the example I gave with Steve Jobs and the original Macintosh team. Maybe you have very, very, very many of them, and that's wonderful if you do. I want you to pick one in this activity for each of these 3 categories. So one, in the past, the defining moment you're especially proud of from your past. And maybe for Steve Jobs, in my mind's eye, I think, I wouldn't be surprised maybe if you would pick that picture. What would one of yours be that really represents you in a moment, in that present moment, being who you are at your best in professional life, being a 3R person, 3R leader? How about in the present? How about in the here and now? And we all live in the present, and we all kind of navigate our way through life with facing right in front of us the current challenges and opportunities and trying to take our best shot and make our best decisions and so forth. And there's this dialogue between our past self and our future aspiration, but we're all we ever do is, kind of live one moment to the next and one interaction to the next. And so how about in this current phase of things, if you could capture you at your best in this era, this current era, if you could get a picture, maybe you have one that you have taken recently or one that could be taken, what represents you at your very best now, in the here and now? You being the best you can as a 3R person, 3R leader, however you want to think about that. And then the third picture, as you see where this is going, is towards the future. Because we're all always on this arc from where we've come through where we're going on the way to our best aspirations. And in fact, that's the note of encouragement in this activity in terms of a future picture, is to constantly be reaching for not only who is the best person and leader that I can be in this next interaction, on the way to becoming the very best leader, and can I say person too, that I can imagine myself becoming. In other words, cast a line out into the future. The question is, as I learn and grow and develop, who is the very best leader I am capable of eventually becoming? And now what can I do? And then we reverse engineer that into the present and say, okay, what can I be doing now to help me get there? And you saw the Steve Jobs example of one piece of his development strategy was that nightly question that he's holding himself accountable to. So the best you that you're capable of becoming, what does that look like? And so the future picture, years from now, as you grow and become the kind of person, the kind of leader that you truly do want to be, what does that look like in the real world? Back to the snapshot, right? And take a journey out into the future, bring your iPhone or whatever device you prefer, kind of take a video and see what's different and better in your future life, and grab a snapshot from that future self and that future life. And then that's the idea of this exercise. And the reason is to understand yours, to understand others, and to keep navigating one interaction at a time directionally toward the very best leader that you're capable of even conceiving becoming. And so finally, that brings us back around to our example of the picture. Do you remember the picture? So here is the picture. And why did I show this picture? Well, a few reasons, and then one of them now. I think you see where this is going. And so this is the actual picture that one leader sent to me. And by the way, I love getting these pictures. Please do feel welcome to send me any if you have one of these pictures from the activity. I couldn't be more interested in seeing them. I absolutely love them. And in any event, so this is one, and it came in from someone who happens to be a surgeon, and then she's excuse me, I might get the terminology wrong. Head and neck surgery department is what she's in. In any event, and I want to read to you the comment that she attached to the picture. And now you see why I was saying before, there's more going on in this picture. This is a picture that she chose in the present at the time of her best. This is her 3R moment. This is her just absolutely being the kind of person, the kind of leader that she really wants to be, even while in the stress and pressure and difficulty of the surgery room. And then here's what she said. This is a candid snapshot of our surgical team at work during a challenging case. The photo includes residents, medical students, and a support staff member working together as a team and focusing on the patient. I thought it was really neat to know this photo was taken by a medical student, to see the snapshot in time through his lens, and that point of view was just absolutely phenomenal. So there you go. There's one example of someone just like the rest of us, fighting the good fight to try to be a 3R leader, one interaction at a time. With that, I will conclude the formal delivery part of the presentation. And if there are comments, questions, and discussions, discussion items, observations, let's do it.
Professor, thank you very much for an outstanding and brilliant presentation. I mean, you're making me miss being back at UCLA Anderson, and listening to this in class, unfortunately fortunately back at Anderson, we had 3-4 hours at a time, right? So it's hard to condense a lot of this into 25 minutes, but, and everybody feel free to ask questions. And I think Dr. Ullman has access to the chat. And, one thing, John, that I take from this message is that, and I'm sure many of the members of the audience will agree with me, is that this is vastly different training than we're used to receiving. Right? I mean, we don't learn very much of this in medical school, even though I think now there are more progressive, education curriculum that maybe stress these messages. But it seems to me that some of this is more inherent to some people and less inherent to other people. And why do you think that is? Is it experience? Is it emotional intelligence? What would be your explanation for why people are at different levels with regard to this kind of work?
Yeah, because we're all born with Human Operating System 1.0, right? In other words, this is not natural, it's not normal, it's not easy, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? In other words, these are all, none of these best of the best leaders, there's no such thing as a born leader. That debate between born and made, no such thing. And they're all made, and it's all developed, and it's all the zigzaggy struggle of learning from challenge, difficulty, failure, setbacks. No one's immune, right? And there's only one way to get there, and it's learning in ways that are incredible and phenomenal, but also learning the hard way through mistakes and so forth. In fact, another thing that distinguishes these best of the best leaders, in my view, is in another brief model here. Number one, they over-index on differentiating strengths, right? So what am I really, 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 really good at? Let's say top two, qualities, in addition to functional, technical, excellence, surgical skills or whatnot, as an example. What are my top two? So let's say Steve Jobs, surely innovation is one of those, right? Being creative, being innovative. But over-index, overdevelop, spend disproportionate 80-20 rule, more time in the things that you are differently better at. And every great leader has a different, kind of top two, let's say. And so over-index in strengths, don't try to be all things to all people, don't try to be great at everything. Nope, no one can be. Be really, 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 really good at the things you're really, really, really good at and have passion for. Second, they relationship build to weakness, right? So they are full of weaknesses, they're full of flaws, just like all of us, but they have the self-awareness to understand that if I put a lot of time and energy into this skill or this skill or this skill, I'm not going to be all that great at it. So therefore, what I need to do is have people in my life that I have tremendous trust and confidence in, that I can utterly trust. And to them, I can turn in those when I'm steering into a zone that highlights one of my weaknesses, or to get feedback, or again, if we're leading at scale, delegate to people who are really great at the things I'm not good at. But that's first, second, and third, a relationship building question. Do you have people in your life that you've earned the utter trust of, that then you can count on them to step up into the areas you're not good at? Then you don't have to waste time with it. And delegate. It's an easy word, but delegate to whom? People who are really great at it and you can really trust. And so there's another distinction, right? Is play to your strengths and relationship build to weaknesses. The another quality I've noticed in these best of the besters, let's say, is resilience. And again, no one gets to the easy way. Every leader's journey, over time, that's over the stretch of time, is something like the Steve Jobs journey, in the sense of there's failures, there's difficulties, there's setbacks, there's embarrassments. No one's immune, and major ones and massive ones. And somehow these folks, in other words, they don't have special powers, special genetics, special capabilities. They're human just like the rest of us. They're the first people to say it. But they say that they found a way to develop a relationship with failure and setbacks and embarrassment. And it doesn't go away, it doesn't stop happening, but they say, oh, this is part of what it means to actually lead, is to take responsibility and continue to take responsibility for things that will continue to go wrong, and they'll never stop going wrong. Worst motivational speech ever at the in the presentation here. Don't highlight this clip, right? But they say, oh, that is a part of it. It's an essential part of it. People are going to screw up. People are going to make mistakes. People are going to fall short. People are going to let me down, and I am going to also. Now, what do you do with that reality, right? And you never solve it. And it never kind of gets better. What you do is you get very functional about it and say, okay, and now, one way of thinking about that is pull together a team, right? And it's not about me, it's about us. It's about us fighting the good fight. imperfect humans that we are, and then now how do we pull together and then drive forward despite challenge, difficulty, setback, externally, and all the rest of it. Yeah, over-index on strengths, relationship build to weakness, and kind of embrace, not accept, embrace failure, setbacks, and so forth. Don't try to make it go away, but say like, how do I have a strategy that for the next one and the next one and the next one, because they're going to keep coming.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the answer to that question. It's obviously not a simple one. The questions are rolling in, actually. I have a question from Dr. Malkara. He says, thank you for your excellent talk. In your coaching experience, what is typically the most frequent issue that you find needs to be addressed more than anything by individuals in their leadership growth and development?
Oh, yeah. So it's influencing without authority, right? So how do I influence other people, especially when I don't have, hierarchical status and so forth. But, however, it doesn't get it really doesn't get any easier to influence with authority. I was just thinking for a second, JC, when you were talking about, in our discipline, in our area, we don't get special training on this. So could have been an exact quote from the surgeon, CEO, former surgeon CEO that I worked with, right? And by the way, it's very common, not just in this field, right? There's lots of disciplines that it just doesn't happen. And so we learn the challenging way and the hard way. Anyway, how to influencing others. With or without authority, but especially without authority. And then the biggest mistake is to say the central question of that is how do I influence? In other words, the question always is like, how do I motivate this crappy person on my team, right? Or how do I change? I got this bad boss, right? What do I do to make this boss be better? Or what do I do to make this team member, as direct report, better? In other words, the influence question often is framed as how do I get others to do what I want? And we all think it and we all feel it, and it's a pressing question and it makes sense and it can be even true. It's the wrong question, right? We feel it strongly. It's in our gut, it's in our head, and we can say, no, this person really is being a jerk. How do I change them? It's the wrong question, right? And it's a question that's going to keep leading us down the wrong road, and it's not going to work. It's going to be a waste of time and ineffective and damage results and relationships and reputation. Instead, the way to frame the question is, and I think a central leadership principle, again, in my view, is the leader's job isn't. In other words, these best of the best leaders, here's what they don't do. They don't show up at work every day and say like, okay, I'm the smartest person. I'm incredibly wise. Look at my status, my power and authority. No, some do. I'm saying the best of the best. Here's what they never do. How do I get people to do what I want, right? How do I get all these people with their limited knowledge and capability and talent and their benighted perspectives to do what the wise, powerful person who's always right, they don't think that way. They don't act that way, right? Interaction by interaction. They have learned often very, through lots of failure and difficulty, that that's not the question at all. It doesn't work, number one. Number two, I might be wrong. A lot of times I am wrong, especially when I don't think I'm wrong. And cognitive biases and all that, right? So my number one job is to show up and create the conditions for others to succeed. What can I do to help this individual I'm working with and this team and this function and this organization? What can I do to help them perform at their best right now and help them grow and develop into the best leader and so forth that they're capable of becoming? That's my job every day, all day, right? And so when it comes to how do I influence others, it's a question of who is this person at their very best, what are they truly capable of, imperfect as they are, while they're screwing up, while they're backstabbing me, saying nasty things or whatever, right? Behaving poorly, even in this moment. What can I do to bring out the most functional side of this person? What can I do that's within my jurisdiction, my control? And that often, paradoxically, the route to do that isn't to point out their faults or present a logical argument about all the mistakes they're making. And now I've got the answers for you. It just doesn't work. A lot of times we're wrong anyway. Instead, it's steering towards strengths. It's a much better route. It's like start to highlight, appreciate, invest in what is this person really good at in a genuine way and so forth. See if there's a way to play to their strengths in a way that then they can start owning and seeing a bigger picture, value or perspective that they can buy into. Again, not manipulating and twisting levers, but genuinely connecting with them on the level of their best motives, their best strengths, and then try to get from here to a better place for all of us, not just because I'm so wise and I'm going to tell them how they should, think and feel and act.
I have another question from Dr. Peter Lawrence, who actually, I can personally say that Dr. Peter Lawrence is one of my greatest mentors, throughout my career. We've discussed it, in class and worked on, projects, identifying mentors. And so Dr. Lawrence, who is the chief of our division at UCLA, asks, Jack Welch built a huge company where he couldn't react with all of his leaders. Did he use the same model of one relationship at a time? I believe that he developed a college with Six Sigma to teach leadership at GE. Can you please comment?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say, Dr. Lawrence, a salute to you. And because of, in ways that maybe some ways you're aware of, but just even in conversations with JC, the respect and the admiration he holds for you, and the impact that you've had on him, as I've learned, is phenomenal, and therefore on others as well. This is the reputation piece. In the language you were using before, the ripple effect of people who are leading by example and taking the best shot, and so thank you, Dr. Lawrence. And can we all thank all of the, maybe a little embarrassing for Dr. Lawrence, sorry. You got to deal with it. When you're a good leader, that's what you got to deal with sometimes. So deal with it, Dr. Lawrence, you're great. Anyway, and then, as a quick side note on the way back to Jack Welch, can we all pause for a second and maybe just bring to mind and kind of acknowledge who are your best of the best role model leaders in your life? Right? When you are who you are at your very best, and again, you can go beyond professional life, but professional life, maybe as a person, as a friend, as a sibling, as a spouse, who's had the most to say about that? Who's had the most influence on you when you are who you are at your best in professional life? Who? And a suggestion, just like Dr. Lawrence sort of got put in the hot seat here. I want to suggest, in other words, this is a method. This is something I've learned from my research and work with leaders too. This is real. It's deep, and it's a phenomenally valuable tool, which is to say, call to mind these people frequently, and then call them on the phone or on video chat frequently as well. And if they happen to still be with us, if not, tell someone else who knows. Would you please today, as a suggested follow-up, reach out to that number one most positive influencer you've had in your life today and tell them, hey, someone asked the question today, who's had the most positive influence on me? And it's you. Thank you. And if that person is no longer with us, reach out to someone else who would understand and get it. And then that creates this resonance, that creates that third R. It's how we want to be ourselves as well. We pay forward the legacy that wonderful people have paid into us. In any event, back to Jack Welch. Interesting. I was just talking with someone who worked directly with Jack Welch, and 2 days ago, and then I'm pausing for a second to be concise. So he went through at least 3. But those of you who aren't really recognizing the name, it wasn't that long ago when Jack Welch was kind of the Steve Jobs of kind of CEO-ness, right? Like everyone knew Jack Welch, and in the culture and so forth, and lots of publicity, and a very controversial figure in a lot of ways too. Highly, highly admired by some, highly, highly hated by others. And there's arguments to be made on both sides and all the rest, but nonetheless, an incredibly influential leader. That is absolutely for sure. And one of the things I noticed, an anecdote, I was at a conference many years ago, and as it turns out, there's like 3 or 4 people who were indifferent, and they happened to have worked for Jack Welch before. And they all, there's a reason why we ended up clustering. In any event, here's what they said, all of them. They said, toughest SOB I've ever worked for, most infuriating person I've ever worked for, most inspiring leader, I love him with all my heart, right? It's a both and, back to the 3 R's, results and relationship and reputation. Hard driver when it comes to results. And as these people said, also, no one cared more about me truly and deeply, and it went both ways. And so he switched his approach, multiple times, even while at GE, because the business demanded it. And so in any event, one of the ways that he scaled, and one of his, and I think this gets back to the center point of Dr. Lawrence's question, a real innovation of his. And as much as his reputation was as a command and control person and very directive because he had such a strong personality, he really led the way. He was incredibly influential in creating, in busting down hierarchy and creating transparency across hierarchical lines. And then he himself, as well as his directs and their directs and their directs, created a system where they would routinely, at multiple levels in the organization, all the way up to and including Welch himself leading by example, you have to stand in front of your people in an open forum, and depending on how many people in your organization, you have dozens, many dozens, hundreds, and you have to listen to them. Come up with criticisms, say what's wrong, say what you're doing inappropriately and effectively, and you have to answer them right then and there in public. You have to listen to that. You have to take it. You have to respond right now in public and say, here's what I'm going to do, or you make a promise about how you're going to come back. And then you do come back, and all that's public too. So putting these leaders out in public and just trying to get rid of as much as possible all the distortions that come with hierarchy, and communicating directly, on a level playing field. Here's what you really need to hear. Here's why your strategy isn't working. Here's why this thing that you put in place isn't working anymore. And that is exactly why Welch survived, so to speak, as a leader as long as he did, because he kept hearing how strategy number 1 worked for a while, but then didn't. Strategy number 2 worked for a while, then didn't. And then on to strategy number 3. So put ourselves out there, open forum, hear the good stuff, hear the ugly stuff, get other really good people with great brains who are good at other things together, and come up with a response that maybe isn't your idea, and so much the better if you're a leader.
Dr. Ullman, we're okay going over a little bit with the question and answer. Some questions are popping up. We had a little bit of time earlier where we did a coffee break, so I think we can continue with a few more questions if you don't mind.
Sure.
I have a question from actually another one of my lifetime mentors who also fills that R with regard to reputation, Dr. Roy Fujitani, who's at the University of California, Irvine, who has inspired many, many young trainees to go into vascular surgery. And he asks, excellent talk. How important is emotional intelligence in providing leadership and influencing goal achievement?
Can you say it again? Emotional intelligence and what?
How important is emotional intelligence in providing leadership in influencing goal achievement?
Yeah, great. Crucially important. Research on this is very clear. You won't succeed, certainly over any stretch of time as a leader at scale without it. I'll come back to that, but first of all, I can't help it. Another big high five and fist bump and a big virtual Zoom-like Corona safe hug to Dr. Fujitani. Thank you for all you do for JC and all the others as well. And I'm sneaking in another tool because this is where my mind went first when you started talking about Dr. Fujitani. So a moment ago, I cheated and snuck in positive influencer as another tool for all of us to consider. Okay, now I'm sneaking in one more, which is to say multiple mentors, right? So maybe, some of us have the great good fortune of having a mentor in our life, which is to say someone who is more seasoned, experienced, often older, doesn't have to be, but further down the obstacle course of work and life. And so there's more wisdom and experience they have about navigating the ups and downs and the challenges. And my definition of mentor, operational definition, is someone who cares at least as much about your own success, development, and growth, and happiness and well-being as you do, or more. They care as much about you as you do, or more. That's a mentor. In other words, and now you can't have a whole bunch of them, right? But we can have one, and the suggestion is, please, let's do the best we can to have more than one. And this is a best practice, again, that I've learned from my best of the best leaders. And that is to say, reach out to these folks, these wonderful folks, and see if you can have 3, 4, 5 in your life of people that you think of this way. They don't have to be leaders at scale, but you look up to them, you respect them. They're more seasoned, they're more experienced, they're diverse, not just one mentor. Have a few. Keep reaching out to those senior folks. It's just pricelessly valuable to have those kinds of people playing a role in your life. Okay, so emotional intelligence. So there's a kind of a formal definition of that, and it kind of sprawls out as well. But it's like there's kind of self-awareness and kind of awareness of others. There's kind of self-others, and then it's kind of myself, and then at a group scale. And then so part of the self-awareness, do I understand ways in which we talked about strength and weakness before. I can use that language. Do I have an understanding of the ways in which I am, capable and have talent and skill and so forth. And do I understand that? The things I do really well, especially when it comes to interpersonally, the interpersonal skills, how I interact with others. And do I also understand the ways in which the impact I have on others is not what I want it to be? And we all have blind spots. We all, land in the hearts and minds of others in ways that are unexpected or unwanted. But then we all also have patterns of that. I think I'm a great listener. Yeah, and this is one of the methodologies of being an executive coach is I do confidential one-on-one interviews with the whole constellation of stakeholders, 10, 20 around a senior leader, and get what do they really think and feel. So I might think I'm a great listener, but I've got 16 out of 18 of my most crucial stakeholders that say you got to work on listening. Guess what? I got to work on listening, and so the self-awareness wasn't there. Now maybe it is there, and now I can do something about it. So one key piece is the self-awareness. What am I good at? What are areas that I need to grow and improve and get better at, as measured by not just what I think, right, but a constant input and a transparent kind of discussion from the key stakeholders. In other words, the suggestion is proactively go out and ask people, hey, what can I do better? How can I be, what can I do to help you succeed even more? What are some ways in which I might take a look at being even more effective when it comes to how we interact? In my presence on the team, are you coming out better than before or not? What are some things I could do a little bit differently? In other words, you can just plain language here and make it a business as usual check-in conversation from time to time. That's big and formal and a process and so forth. But getting a window into self-awareness on the plus side and on the delta side, and then wash, rinse, repeat. Just keep that going, and then take your best shot. I'll take a shot. I'll probably make mistakes, but let me know how it's going. It's like that. And then likewise in terms of that, getting better and better at understanding, and reading more effectively others, right? And so on the emotional intelligence side, so if I got 16 out of 18 people saying I'm no good at listening, I probably have some room to improve in my perception of other people's emotional states as well. In other words, what's really going on in the hearts and minds of others, right? So within myself, self-knowledge, good at, need to improve, and then others. What's really going on kind of in the hearts and minds of others? And then what can I do to help make that better, right? To help have the kind of impact I really want to have. And then that is another part of emotional intelligence. And you can see where this is going, right? How are you going to be an effective team leader over time if you're not coming in trying to help others learn and grow and be more effective and be successful, and then learning ways to do that more effectively and so forth, and ways we're not doing it. And then if you're Steve Jobs and you have the incredible intellectual capacity to upend like 5, 6, 7 industries, well, okay, maybe for a while, you'll lead at scale. And even then, chances are you might even get kicked out of your own company, so to speak, right? In other words, he's the exception that proves the rule, but then again, he kind of didn't because he still got fired from his own company. And it was an emotional intelligence deficit. That was the problem. So it's the success factor in so many ways, in addition to other things. But without it, it's not going to happen. Absolutely crucial. Self-understanding, better understanding of the real impact you're having on others. What are they really thinking and feeling? And then are you really having the impact of helping them? Remember the influence question. How can I help others be more successful? And after people bounce off of me, the relationship question, are they coming out better than before? Look for that in the visible and audible spectrum, get feedback and input on that routinely.
Dr. Ullman, we have time for one more question from one of our trainees who gave some excellent talks earlier in the meeting. From Dr. Gabel. He asks, thank you, Dr. Ullman, for your excellent talk. As Dr. Jimenez mentioned, leadership training is something as surgeons we end up having to pick up along the way. As a resident starting vascular fellowship next year who hopes to continue in academic medicine and administrative roles, do you have a book or resource you'd recommend as an introduction and model for healthcare leadership?
Oh, at the end, healthcare leadership. I probably should have one. None's coming to mind that's in particular about healthcare itself. Surely there must be some out there. And this was Dr. Gabel. Did I say that right?
Dr. Gabel, yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Okay. I'm pausing for a second. So with that said, a recommendation, so many recommendations. But let me suggest, and it's not about healthcare in particular, although a lot of examples from healthcare get worked in. I'm going to give you some names because it's about a body of work. So one name I already mentioned is Jim Collins. And then he's got several books out there, and these three names I'm going to give you right off the top, and they're really they tend to be really good at having their points of view being well grounded in research, but then also translating that research into actionable tools for normal folks. So Jim Collins, probably a place to start there is Good to Great, but then just about anything he's written, follow the trail, and it's a whole body of work. Another that comes to mind is Chip and Dan Heath, Heath, and yes, they're related, Heath brothers, and they've got several books out there. Again, real discipline about solid research, and then adding value and then translating into, and they've got lots of examples from healthcare as well. And then a third that comes to mind is Dan Pink, Pink. Likewise, several books. He's a journalist, but he's really, again, very respectful of the science, and all these are very readable, very fun, very interesting. Okay, now with that said, so those are ways to start playing around when it comes to books. I would also suggest, in this day and age, it's all about podcasts. And so if you don't know about podcasts, now you know, or at least go find out, and hit some searches on most popular leadership podcasts or healthcare podcasts or whatnot. Because what happens in the podcast model, which is these are audio discussions that are they can be any length, but a lot of times they're long form, an hour, 2, 3 even. And so instead of just sound bites that are pre-scripted and so forth, you've got leading thinkers and practitioners that are in long form discussion. And often the reason they're there is because they have a bunch of books, or they got a new one that's just come out, and they're kind of giving you the cutting edge latest stuff. And so the suggestion would be, check out podcasts. And let's see, I'd say Brene Brown. Let's go for some diversity here. Brene Brown. She also has a bunch of great books too. Check her out. And the Happiness Lab, and that's Lauren Santos, and she's on faculty at Yale. And so there's a couple of women sources who also have a whole body of work, but also they're putting out podcasts routinely as well. And then go have fun in the world of podcasts. It's just an amazing resource, and it's all free. It's crazy.
Dr. Ullman, I also want to recommend, I mean, this isn't a book on healthcare leadership, but it's a book on leadership that you assigned during one of our projects in our class. And it is one of the most spectacular books I ever read. I think I read it in a day and a half, is the autobiography of Phil Knight, the story of Nike. Shoe Dog. It's called Shoe Dog. You recommended that to us, and it was spectacular. And I also want to give a little plug for Dr. Ullman, his LinkedIn videos on several different topics, which he discussed today, developing executive presence, et cetera, are excellent resources also for touching up on these. And I actually recently went back and viewed a few of them. So, Dr. Ullman, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We could keep talking about this for the next 2 hours. But I want to thank you for your outstanding presentation and for joining us on a Sunday morning. I'm sure the society got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, JC. And thank you all. Take care, everybody.